Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Baldwin number 0340 Dutch door quadrant. This one happens to be in the satin nickel finish, and this is what it looks like when it comes in the packaging. Now, admittedly, there's not a lot of information, and in fact, at the time of this video, I am unable to locate any information whatsoever on the Baldwin website when it comes to quadrants. Now, because I happen to make a living in the door hardware industry, I understand what a quadrant is for and how it's used, but I could very much understand someone having confusion if it's the first time they're really being exposed to a quadrant, what it's used for and what its function is. All of that is compounded by the fact that quadrants are shown online, installed in different fashions. They're shown as installed. This is the image you most commonly see. Oh, wait a minute. That's the image I think you most commonly see. Just like this. However, this is not the way it should look when the hardware is at rest. Or I should say, forgive me, this is not the way that it should look when the hardware is engaged. So when the device is at rest, it should look like this. What I mean is, you have a Dutch door with an upper leaf and a lower leaf. Well, upper leaf and lower leaf, okay? You want to be able to control those either together or like that. When the piece of hardware is shown this way, one might conclude, okay, I'm to install it mounted on the top leaf. That would make sense. The hardware would be engaged, locked. It would be securing the two leaves together. However, the proper way to install it is this, and I don't know that there's not a rule that I'm aware of. You don't really find any information. The only experience I have of Dutch door quadrants is having them in my hands, understanding Dutch doors, and then references to catalogs. But even in catalog references, those are hard to come across because they don't really exist. You would install this on the lower leaf, and then when you wanted to lock the two doors together, you would lift the quadrant up and engage the surface-mounted strike that is mounted on the face of the upper leaf. So don't install this on the top leaf. You could, but when you were to disengage to open the top leaf, you're forever then not going to be able to secure your door, or at least close your door in the closed position, because you'll have some conflict here. So this goes to the lower leaf. This lifts up. I've also seen this shown online installed this way, horizontally. I would have no problem with installing that horizontally, except that, you're going to have a strike, and the piece that you're not seeing is the strike, so that it's really intended to look like that when it's fully installed. Okay, so then you would then disengage, so that then you look like this. Your upper leaf can then move until you re-engage. I've seen them installed. I've seen them online shown in this fashion. Now, I wouldn't have any problem doing that per se. However, if this is installed on the jamb, I think you have the potential for conflict of this piece of hardware. You might not have any trouble with that. However, you'd be mindful of how you're going to install that exactly. Would this make a good way to secure a door and frame, a single door and frame? I suppose that it might. I've not really seen it installed that way, but then again, confirm your conflict if there is one, meaning the piece of hardware is going to have to be lifted out and fold down, permitting you to be able to then open the door. So you want to just be sure that you've got room for all this hardware to work. maybe you've got a double door opening and they're both Dutch doors and you need 3 quadrants. That could be. So who knows? But the fact of the matter is, I do conclude that the way to install it would be this on the lower leaf. This is what it looks like when you're disengaged. When you want to engage, lift it up. That's also bolstered by the fact that you can do a Google patent search for Dutch door quadrant, and you will find the intention of the inventor, or at least according to that patent, that the intention of the inventor is exactly that it's mounted on the lower leaf, hanging down when you're disengaged. And that's an interesting document there from 1959, in fact. A.C. Wilson, inventor. Okay, obviously not the Baldwin item that we have here in our hands, but nonetheless a Dutch door quadrant. So that's how I would install it. I have this in my hands right now because we're supplying a Dutch door to a client. He has the Dutch door. We're supplying the hardware. The client wants a mortise lock in the lower leaf and then a Dutch door quadrant to secure the two together. Well, a mortise lock is great because it's so robust, secure, heavy duty. The problem with the mortise lock is that when you're going to install it, the mortise lock body itself, the face of it's 8-inch tall. Traditionally, your cylinder is up here, but then your knob is down here. So to fit the big, tall body onto that lower leaf, that's going to put that trim position a little bit lower than standard. So what I suggested that we do is we order an upside-down mortise lock. And yes, you can order mortise lock cases that are literally manufactured upside down. The knobs are going to be up closer to the top of the case. The cylinder will be down below. Be mindful to order a cylinder that doesn't have a logo on it. Otherwise, when you thread the cylinder in, the logo will be upside down. But you can easily order cylinders without any stampings on the face. Your key will then work upside down as well, which is not, in America, the suggested way to install a cylinder because of the potential for fatigue on the springs pushing the driver pins up. In Europe, you see it all the time with their profile cylinders. The driver pins are sitting on top of the springs. Well, we don't want to have that because the springs will fatigue, and with enough years in use, you will have an unsecure cylinder, one that will even probably discontinue working. The truth of the matter is, it's a concern only, in my opinion, possibly decades in the future, nonetheless. So made a really creative solution to this Dutch door requirement where we wanted a mortise lock. And the quadrant just really serves the purpose of making it a very elegant solution. And when I'm looking at the patent, which I'm looking at here, and you can just do a search for it. It's patent number 3036849. If you just type, you'll find that patent number. It doesn't appear that you'd have any conflict mounting it horizontally, but I've never seen them installed that way. Might be a neat way to do it. I think a quadrant should be just used only in the way it was intended to be used. Now let's go over some dimensional properties. Obviously, being Baldwin, they can do this in lots of different phenomenal finishes. This is the 150 finish. In Baldwin speak, that's going to mean solid brass, satin nickel with a clear lacquer on it. Very nice finish. Baldwin, a nice finish. Baldwin is my preferred high-end residential and commercial supplier of locks from their estate collection. It's the lock set that I use personally in my own home, and for me, they certainly compete against other people, the MTECs and the Omnias and others, Rocky Mountain certainly, for business. What for me separates them apart is I can call Baldwin. I can say, I've got a lock case from 1978 and I need help with a spring. And you betcha you're going to get help. Every time I call Baldwin technical support, I get the answer. And I would even argue that they bend over backwards to help a client that might have a piece that broke. Who knows how it broke. Baldwin is very flexible when it comes to sending this client a replacement. I've seen latch bolts get replaced because it's obvious it's obvious someone took a cold chisel to the latch bolt and Baldwin bent over backwards. I don't get that from other suppliers of locks, residential decorative locks, and it's why I really just try to stick with Baldwin. So let's go over some dimensional properties. I have no reference, no installation instructions came with this, so that we're going to fly by the seat of our pants. Overall width of the mounting point, about 2.5. Overall height of the mounting point, 1.5 inches. Overall height of the quadrant, overall, looks like it's about 4 3/8. Okay. Overall width down here, looks like it's about 3 7/8. Well, let's take a closer look. Yeah, about 3 7/8, which means your center line will be 1 15/16, right? So just about 2 inch. We've got the overall height. Let's take a projection of the mounting point. About 3/16. To the rivet that's holding it, about 9/16. All the way down to the knob, which appears to be about 1 1/8 inches. Okay. That little slot, that T profile, is what's going to engage the strike. Just like that. That's how you're going to lock everything together. I'm going to guess that the strike is about the same size as the mounting pad. About 2.5 1.5 inches, and then about 1/4 inch or so. It's going to give you fasteners. I was going to say, we're short. We've got plenty of fasteners, in fact, more than necessary to do the job. Be mindful. We know that this is made of brass. These screws are slightly magnetic. That tells me they're not steel. That tells me they're not brass, and if anything, they're probably stainless steel. Stainless steel has a tendency to be marginally magnetic when it's been machined. Hard to tell. The point of that exercise is to let you know, be very careful when you are installing the screws. Be absolutely sure to pre-drill the holes. You don't want to split one of these screws. You don't want to break it off in the frame. You don't want to strip the head because you don't have any extras. Although in this case you do. I don't know that Baldwin plans for improper attempts at installation, so therefore sends additional screws. Don't count on that being the case, because that's not the case. I understand that the pre-drill size on a screw is to be about 70%, pardon me, about 80% of the root diameter of the screw. I was taught that the pre-drill size should be the diameter of the body of the screw, not including the threads. But more recently I've been told that it's about 80% of that dimension. And I've always argued, I've always thought the root diameter is probably a bit too big, and you'll want to use wire sizes as much as possible because of the far greater increment those wire size drill bits go compared to just fractional sizes. Wire size bits are really the way to go when it comes to installing high-end hardware, pre-drilling holes. You're going to order a Baldwin lock. The lock for this client's door, the upside-down custom-made mortise lock, the knobs alone were $300 from Baldwin, and they are utterly gorgeous. Buying all this hardware, you've got $1,500 worth of hardware by the time it's all said and done. Be sure to pre-drill everything. You want the screwdrivers that you use to be an absolute perfect fit for the screw that you're driving. You want to make sure the Phillips point is not too pointy to prevent it from sitting all the way in. And if you don't have the right tool, stop and get the right tool and then do the job, because that will be the difference between utter perfection when installing a piece of hardware like this and something that's not. If you muck up the head of the screw, and I've done it, you can make a perfect mortise and the lock works sublime. But if you muck up the head of a screw because the material is of a soft base material, it could be brass, it's just going to detract from the overall look. And it seems like a client will notice just the head of the screws. Our attention are drawn to the mounting points, is what it seems like. rather than the hardware itself. So anyway, word to the wise, I've made the mistakes and have learned from them. Finally, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Baldwin products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. As you can hopefully tell, I'm a big fan of Baldwin, and it's not only because of the outrageous quality, but it's because of that technical support I get every single time I call. It makes me have hope for the future that there will always be people who do nothing other than focus on possessing deep working knowledge of what they do. And those people at Baldwin have that. Baldwin also has some very interesting locks. They're rim locks. If you're ever looking for, if you've ever come across a rim lock is a, think of a skeleton key type lock, the vernacular. A rim lock would probably technically be a lever lock and not a lever lock. A lever is the word lever is a reference to a tumbler design that certainly goes back to the 19th century. Forgive me, I'm not a historian when it comes to locksmithing, but I bet I just am grossly off. I bet a lever design goes back hundreds of years. And the Biltmore estate in Asheville is full of rim locks, hundreds of them, and it's just a gorgeous piece of hardware from Baldwin. They're rim locks. They're 5600 series rim lock. They have some beautiful material there. If you ever have a chance and you have an interest in lock sets, take a look at their rim locks. A rim lock because it's mounted to the rim of the door. And the skeleton keys, or they may be barrel keys. They're for sure warded. I can see the notches in the keys looking at the pictures. There would be wards on the inside of the case. A ward is a blockage when it comes to a key passing. But very interesting stuff. Having said that, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders. Any questions on the Baldwin 0340 quadrant? And of course, it's available in every possible finish from Baldwin. Or any other Baldwin product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.